Hello, welcome to T-Pill's Corner. I am Travis. Today's video is a discussion topic instead of gameplay, but I've got Arena up, so if I reference a term or a card, it's easy to give you a visual. Today's topic is saving alchemy. A lot of you did not enjoy your initial exposure to alchemy in the first place, so your first instinct might be to say, why save it, let it burn! But it might prove useful to us after all, so it's worth considering how to improve things. And let's be clear, we've got a game here that's still kicking after 30 plus years, and the reason we talk about things like this is we still enjoy the game. We want it to remain strong. And so every suggestion made here is to find the path that keeps us always marching towards the fun, and always with an eye towards making things better for as many people as we can. Just as a lot of us like to analyze a match to find the best line, we want to find the best way forward here. There's a couple of ideas I want to offer today, and I'll refer to them as a firewall and a windfall. Before I describe those, I should declare I have no modern snapshot that tells me how alchemy is doing. For all I know, the data Wizards of the Coast is compiling has them relatively satisfied with alchemy's performance. After all, they're dedicating resources to continually design and release cards into that environment. People are also deploying alchemy cards in Historic, to my disgust, so people are buying packs and crafting alchemy cards with their wild cards. So it's proving worth Wizards' while to keep it going at the very least. But this is probably one aspect of the game that would most benefit from improvement. Wizards and I have, I think, the same goal here. They would like me to play alchemy, and I would like alchemy to be attractive enough that I would want to play it. And hopefully that applies to a lot of you out there too. Whatever level of engagement they're at now, as a profit-seeking company, they should be eager to grow their numbers for participation. So we're not going to be satisfied with one of their standard corporate caveats. That not every product is for every customer. That may fly for alternative card styles or their latest secret lair offering, but an entire format, they should want to maximize our willingness to try out as many formats as possible. But they have to make it fun for us, not make it seem like homework. We're not going to dwell on all the missteps we've experienced so far with alchemy. I can create a list if you want, so leave a comment if you want that kind of a listicle rant, but that would take up all our time. Let's jump right into the fixes, and some of the problems will naturally come up as part of the discussion. Let's take the firewall. The firewall is an idea that would be best implemented as soon as humanly possible. Make alchemy its own game on Arena with no cards crossing over into the other Magic formats. Alchemy would be in its own silo with its own 2-year rotation, and its own alchemy historic format, so you always have a place to play with your older alchemy cards after they fall out of rotation. This removes so many pain points and offers so much new potential at the same time, it's worth trying as an experiment now. And you could roll it back, if you failed, you could roll it all back and put alchemy back into the place where it is now. But given the inertia that builds up with this game, if they don't try it now, then each day that passes reduces the chance that they ever will. Let me give you an example. Mill. For the newer players, you may mill 3 cards and return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Summon undead. You see the definition in the upper right. To mill a card, player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. Mill could be an evergreen keyword right now, like flying a reward here. You see? It's not. And they've been trying to find a new word they could use in its place for years, and they haven't come up with one. So just bite the bullet and commit, but they don't. And every year that passes creates its own pressure within the bureaucracy of that company, that idea of, oh, this is the way we've always done it. And they get too scared to make the change, to make any change. Here with Alchemy, they had the most wonderful opportunity, a brand new format in which the entire point is to experiment with something new. You know, they've proven that they can take a card that exists in print and they're willing to change it digitally. They're willing to get data on how much it's used and tweak it to try and make us use it more. If they're willing to do that, if the whole point is to go into the digital environment and do things you can't do in physical and be willing to experiment, having it firewalled off from the main game so that the main game doesn't get affected is a great idea. Now, the head designer of Magic the Gathering, Mark Rosewater, has a list now. I think it started as like a top 10 list or something. It's got to be closer to 20 things by now that he would change if he were creating Magic the Gathering today. For example, he would have put the mana cost on the upper right instead of the upper left. So when you fan out your physical cards, you could better see all your mana costs. It's too late for Paper Magic to do that now. They will never make that change. It's less of an issue with digital, but if Alchemy was in its own silo, you know what? Change it. Give the Alchemy cards a different distinguished look in their own silo. We had the issue where they seemed to have lazy artwork design, where they had one main card and then there were like 6 subtypes, but the artwork was exact same for all 5 or 6 of those. And you had to read the card physically each time they put one new version on the battlefield to figure out which kind you were dealing with. That's a lot of extra work for us just trying to play a game. Dedicate digital-only artists to make all those artwork things different. Or you could create that sorcery subtype Rosewater has always wanted, so you could finally do a fire-based tribal spell subtype that you were never able to make in the original game. Take all those 20 things that you would do differently if you're creating the game from scratch, now with 30 years worth of hindsight in game design, and once a month implement one of those changes in Alchemy. And analyze your metrics to decide if you want to keep it. You could spend the entire rest of the year collecting data and deciding if it worked for the game or not. With modern data analytics as well as online polling, you can beta test each modification with constant updated feedback. And since it's all over in its own silo now, nothing would change over in the established game we all know and love. But if just 5 or 6 of those changes would improve the game, we'd no longer have to shrug our shoulders and say, oh, we can never change that. But instead, it would give us additional incentive to give the Alchemy format another try. It would be not just another format with different cards, but there would be slight differences as they implemented these changes to the game. It would be visually different. There might be different mechanics, that kind of thing. Here's another pain point that would be removed. We wouldn't have to keep track of all these changed cards anymore. Right now, once a physical Magic card is printed, that's it, you're done. If it's broken, you ban it. What Wizards of the Coast has been doing is looking at how often those cards are played and using the total games of the player base as a way to continue their beta testing. Then they slap an Alchemy modifier on a regular card. And now you have a second card. You have a digital-only version of an otherwise identical card, but now you have to pay attention to what format you're in, and if this version has a different mana cost or a different activation ability. Oh, and guess what? You can't use your original card in Historic anymore. It's going to be the Alchemy card, and you've got to keep track of that. A siloed game would mean an end to printing the physical cards and then making us waste our time keeping track of that card and whether you've modified it online. The original game should not be where you tamper with things. If we silo Alchemy, we can reverse the process. What do I mean by that? What about implementing a 6th color into the Alchemy silo? If it doesn't take well, then no harm, no foul. Maybe you erase it from Alchemy later after, a month or 2. It's digital only, so it would be that much easier than printing paper cards first. But what if that 6th color worked? What if it was wildly popular? Then you could import it into the regular silo later. Going forward, Wizards could have a permanent digital-only beta test environment to help flesh out new innovations, but the firewall would prevent any mistakes from being imposed on the main silo. You've now reversed the flow and prevented this digital tampering from hurting the game. Not to mention it would help you damp down on the power level creep, because every time that they tweak a card, it's almost always, it's maybe every now and then they have a broken card they're trying to fix, but most of it is to take cards that we're not playing with because they're too weak and they're ramping up the power. And that ramps up the power on everything in the entire environment eventually. But now if you reverse the flow, now you turn it to your advantage by making the digital arena your proving grounds, only sending the experiments with a positive outcome over to help add on to the experience in the main silo. There are also other categories where you might be able to stretch the sword and sorcery roots of the game. Like, let's look at Kamigawa, for example. The original Kamigawa expansion, the original set was feudal Japan based, right? But then we ended up getting, what did we get? We got Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. And it's sort of like we fast forwarded 60, 80 years and they've built skyscrapers and they've melded together technology with magic. And that's a little bit of a stretch, but, we were willing to buy it, right? But what else do we get? We might get like alternative land art that shows sci-fi worlds, that shows planets or something. But they're not going to do a sci-fi set. That's too far from the roots. But if you had over, like Futurist Operative, I don't have a problem with Futurist Operative. It fits for me within the game, within the context, within the environment they gave us. I don't mind having that there. But they might have a rebellion if they tried a real sci-fi expansion set. But what if you did that over in Alchemy? You could stretch that. You could have new environments that you felt didn't fit within the regular main Magic the Gathering sets. You could take those new environments, like sort of science fiction environments, and you could create brand new mechanics. The accompanying mandate would be that every alchemy card has to be unique and different with no same named counterpart in the same silo. See this card? I already have this card. What they did with the Baldur's Gate expansion is they slapped the Baldur's expansion symbol on it, and then when I opened the packs to see what new cards I was getting, it told me this card was new. No, this card is not new. I've had 4 copies of this card with Adventures of the Forgotten Realms set. I've played with this card. I've made entire decks focused around this card. I've played this card to death. That was not a new card for me. There's no way you should be doing that to us. They would have to design a true alchemy core set. Which leads me to the second idea, the Windfall. To debut the creation of the Firewall, Wizards would also debut the new core set, which would give the players between 4 to 10 starter decks, right, pre-made starter decks, and 1 card of each new core set card. You heard me. They owe us for that Baldur's Gate nonsense anyway. And they owe us for Jumpstart. Let me digress for a minute with my Jumpstart problem. I like to play an occasional round of Jumpstart. For those unfamiliar with that, you get to choose 1 of 3 20-card packs, and then another 1 of 3. You combine those 2 and battle with essentially a pre-made 40-card deck. They just give you a whole bunch of random expansion sets that are out there in the environment to choose from. I'm good with that format as long as I don't have to choose from the Baldur's Gate expansion. I will take the 3 packs that they give me for the choices, and if I recognize one is Baldur's Gate, then I'm choosing one of the other 2. Now, the last time I tried to play Jumpstart, it gave me the choice of 3 different Baldur's Gate packs only. I'm pretty sure the team at Wizards of the Coast that spies on my gameplay were really splitting their sides on that one. Force mixing these 2 formats is a bad thing. They should be firewalled off from each other. Now, Alchemy could still use all the regular evergreen mechanics like Trample and Flying and Menace. They could even use a nerfed version of Asika's Chariot that they made, as long as they called it something else and maybe gave it a new digital paint job. But if you're serious about a new playground where you can introduce new toys with digital-only abilities, like the Seeker mechanic here, you have to make your player base, you have to provide them with an adequate sample size of the toys, which is why the Windfall, to give us enough copies to make us go over there, to make us want to try. Now, there's a subsection of Magic players that will automatically go over there and play, and probably most of us would open the standard 3 free packs and maybe make a deck and check it out once. That's not enough. Speaking only for myself, if the Alchemy Silo had its own card collection and a separate daily activity for getting 15 wins, and they gave me enough cards to make a few decks to get going, I would go there. I would do my main silo first, and then I would go play Alchemy. I would devote the time to building both collections, and I'm not doing that right now. I'm avoiding Alchemy for the most part. This Windfall idea of giving away cards could probably be used as a standalone way to boost interest, whether you implement the Firewall or not. But the Windfall could be used any time with any format, whenever Wizard wants to draw attention to a particular format. I may experiment with setting up my own polls here to get some data, but for now, think about this. If they created a core set of, say, 150 new Alchemy cards, and they gave you 50 packs to open, would you go have some fun with it? Would you give Alchemy another chance? Would you give it another chance knowing you wouldn't get stuck with all those packs in a regular Jumpstart match anymore? To play with the original Innistrad cards in Historic again instead of the Alchemy revision versions. They could take those Alchemy revision versions and rename them over in the Alchemy silo. Would you give it another chance to go open an Alchemy pack and get genuine new cards and not repackaged Adventures in Forgotten Realms repeats? To play a purple-colored instant subtype bounce tribal Alchemy deck. How much fun might there be if we really took the gloves off to invent and innovate? Let me close with 2 points. Well, 3 points. 1 point is, if you've been listening this long, please hit the friggin' like and subscribe buttons and paste this link to the video in every survey you get from Wizards so they can get a look at this idea. The second point is the game economy here is terrible. In any Windfall they'll give us, 10 packs instead of 3, more pre-made decks to add to our collection, bonus cards for answering survey questions, whatever. Windfalls will help engagement and will better allow us to make the decks we want and keep us playing in their toy box for a longer amount of time, which is what they want. The third and final point is about risk. I'm listening to the long-running podcast episodes of Mark Rosewater. In 5 or 6 podcasts already, he's mentioned that you can't play it safe and only do things you've done before. If you want to hit a home run, you have to take the big swings. And when you do hit a home run, like with Zendikar and Ravnica and Theros and Innistrad, that's when the fans go wild. That's when you get them excited. But Landfall was a risk, and double-faced cards were a risk. And some of them you had to fight for to get them into the game. The Firewall is admittedly a risk, but the potential for it all to be not just a home run in and of itself, but to become an online aid to research and development, to help design even more home runs in the future to incorporate into the main game. Now that's magic. Thanks, everybody. This is Travis from T-Pole's Corner. Have a good one.